We interviewed experts in the field who have a number of useful, practical, and pragmatic tips for the average person.
You'll get into the minds of the people who do this every day. You'll be able to tap into the resources that they turn to when they need help. You get statistics, not just we saw this, we heard this, but we studied this, we looked at this through a microscope. So you're getting a lot of information in this book from a lot of good people who know what they're talking about.
Three potential warning signs that I think everybody should be aware of are people who are excessively angry, people who are intoxicated either by drugs, alcohol, alcoholic beverage, or improper medication, and people who are mentally ill who may be dangerously mentally ill. Those are three key warning signs that we want to pay attention to.
Prevention does not require prediction. If you think about it, prevention has to start early. Prevention has to start long before there's a gunman in your parking lot. Prevention starts when there's conflicts, when there's problems, when there's troubled individuals. And we use prevention very effectively in public health throughout our society.
Well, human nature is extremely hard, if not really impossible, to predict. It's more of a practice than a science by any stretch of the imagination, in my opinion. And there's several factors that you've got to look at. Number one, the person's history, the type of threat that they're displaying. Do they have the ability to carry out the threat that they've made? We've learned over the years, just because somebody makes a threat does not necessarily equate to they're going to carry out the threat and they pose the threat.
Most people have the skills, they're born with them, to know that somebody's a threat to them. But a lot of times they'll explain it away. They'll be in denial about it. They'll say later, well, you know, he made me feel weird. Well, there's a reason. Your body's picking up some kind of signal, and you know, we try to expound upon Gavin de Becker's book, The Gift of Fear, and where he teaches people to, you know, you need to trust those instincts and you need to learn to develop those. And then in our book, we kind of go the extra step is, all right, you sense the danger, what do you do about it? Well, people sense that danger, the first thing you've got to do about it is you've got to listen to it. You know, listen to yourself. Your instincts are usually really good. It's when we start second guessing our instincts that we run into problems.
We can look for patterns of behavior, you know, over time, signs that someone is going to commit an act of violence or they're planning an act of violence. And we can also look for acute things like visual weapon screening that we talked about, where we can look for ways to tell someone's carrying a weapon. We can look at the way someone's talking. If they make specific threats, we can take those seriously rather than just brushing them off. And we're not saying call the police every time someone says something angry to you, but when someone says something to you, don't just say, oh, that's probably an idle threat. Take it seriously and think about it, and maybe consider the way you talk to that person the next time you encounter them, or avoid that area, or modify your behavior somehow.
Well, there aren't many specific risk factors for violence, although we want to pay attention when people threaten violence, when they engage in behavior that's preparation for violence, such as arming themselves or making plans or trying to recruit an accomplice. We really want to focus more on behaviors than psychological profiles.
As soon as you encounter somebody who's either intoxicated, excessively angry, or appears to be emotionally unstable, you should start thinking about potential escape routes, places you can retreat to and secure yourself, other ways to protect yourself, and how you might summon help from security personnel or law enforcement personnel based on where you are. So looking at those as potential warning signs, I think, is a very important survival trait.
Threat assessment is really a problem-solving approach to violence prevention. We identify a problem. Every time a student makes a threat of violence, that's a symptom. That's a red flag that child has encountered a problem, a stress, a difficulty that he or she isn't able to cope with. In the schools where we've implemented threat assessment, we have controlled studies showing that bullying goes down. Suspension rates of students go down. Student trust in their staff, their willingness to come forward and seek help if they're concerned about something, goes up. We see that individuals who have engaged in threats, and these are kids who have multiple disciplinary infractions, they're chronically getting into trouble in school, what we find is that their disciplinary violations go down. Because in fact, what the schools are able to do is identify a problem early, provide counseling, education, support, individualized to that student. The threat assessment approach, they not only stop suspending students who make threats, but their overall suspension rates go down, because really it's an approach to discipline that says, let the punishment fit the crime. Look at the seriousness of the behavior. What can we do to resolve the problem that stimulated this student's misbehavior? And then maybe the next time we won't see that misbehavior.
Having studied these type of incidents that dominate our media coverage, mass casualty shootings and other tragedies, sadly it's pretty apparent that there always have been and always will be mass casualty attacks on people. There are ways that we can reduce the loss of life, no doubt about that, but there is no law we can pass, no gadget we can buy, no technique that we can develop that will absolutely prevent mass casualty attacks. What we do need to do is do the things that are reasonable to try to reduce the occurrence of those, but they are a fact of life. There are a multitude of ways to kill people. There are hundreds of different weapons types besides those that we think of the most often that can and have been used to kill people. There are so many ways to try to circumvent safety measures that there always will be some types of attacks that will occur.
You know, I know there's a lot of media attention to these violent incidents. And you may think that there's no way to get out of it. I hear this all the time. People tell me, well, if somebody wanted to kill you, they'll kill you. Or if somebody wanted to injure you, they'll injure you. They're going to find a way to do it. But I beg to differ. There are a lot of techniques in this book and tips that are written in that book that can help you get out of situations, even when you think it's dire.
Those types of events that dominate the media coverage are not leading causes of death in our country or any other. So we want to make sure that we keep things in perspective and keep a balance.